If there is camera shake here, I apologize. I'm doing this on the iPhone, and probably for the first and only time doing these regular videos, but because the battery was running low on my camera that I usually use. But today marked the passing of one of the giants of thoroughbred horse racing in the United States. The 5 foot 1 inch and in his prime under 120 pound Canadian born, and I think dual Canadian and American citizen, Ron Turcotte, 84, who died of natural causes this morning, according to a business partner of his and a close friend. And I am on a number of Secretariat fan pages, and a lot of people, or some people, had connections to Ron Turcotte. He used to regularly post stuff to Facebook, the various Secretariat fan sites, and he also did some pieces for the Secretariat website. They used to have something called the Turcotte Tuesday that he did for about 5-6 years ago, giving his take on his career and on Secretariats, because nobody knew this horse better than Ron Turcotte did during that horse's career. And of course, I'm jumped ahead of myself. Turcotte was a veteran jockey and born in 1941, one of 12 children, and born under a modest background. But he was a very much in demand jockey in the 60s. I remember when I was a little girl of 10 years old, the first time I saw Turcotte, he was in the winner's circle in the 1965 Preakness, which is 60 years ago, with a horse named Tom Rolfe. And Turcotte rode a number of prominent horses, but it wasn't until he teamed up with Lucien Laurin, who was also French-Canadian like Turcotte, and Penny Chenery, and the rest of them, with Riva Ridge, that he gained prominence. And he was he had won 2 of the 3 Triple Crown races in 1972, and Riva Ridge couldn't handle the slop in the Preakness, so a horse named BBB beat him. And then, of course, he won the Triple Crown with Secretariat masterfully. And basically, Ron Turcotte, and I got to shut off this fan because it's been awful hot here, but Turcotte, ever the modest man, and by all accounts, he was about the nicest person anybody would ever want to meet. But he basically just sat there for the ride. The horse did it all. The horse basically did everything. And nothing was more obvious than that Belmont Stakes. The Preakness was pretty impressive too. But that Belmont, he just sat there, and Secretariat just kept going away and running away and running away and running away from the rest of the horses in that legendary 1973 Belmont. And then, of course, there was the famous, let's find that picture. Kind of hard to do this, when you're 70 years old. Let's find that image. Everybody knows that image. It's the most famous, probably one of the most famous photographs in the history of sports that Bob Colonies took back in 1973, and I could talk about that there was nothing special he did. He just had the camera pointed at it and took the picture. That's basically it. But in that picture, Turcotte was looking at the clock because he knew he and his horse were going too damn fast. And so he wanted to see how fast, or wanted to see whether they would break the record. He was pretty sure they would. And of course he did, in 2:24 flat. A record that has never been approached 52 years later. And of course that, Turcotte became world famous. And he rode Secretariat from the third race until right before his last race, and then he was suspended or something, and Eddie Maple rode Secretariat in the horse's final start in the Canadian the Canadian International. I think that's the name of it. I'm doing this stuff off the top of my head. But what really struck me about Ron Turcotte is there were all those kids in his family, and out of all those kids, 5 of those boys became jockeys. None of the others were ever as famous as Ron, and a couple of them quit early. But Rudy, I remember, Rudy Turcotte. But of those 5, only the youngest one, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. He's in his 60s now, but he's the only one left of those 5. But there was a book I read last summer called The Turcottes, and somebody should make a movie out of it. Somebody should really make a movie or a documentary out of it. And there have been documentaries about Ron Turcotte, and either solely about him or him as part of, I don't know, part of a larger documentary. I hope this damn thing turns out. This is a stinking iPhone, and I hope that I don't have to do it sideways. So, instead of turning it the other way. But anyway, the Turcottes had a lot of tragedy. They had a tremendous amount of tragedy. And between Ron and the youngest brother, there were 3 brothers, and they all, I think 2 of them committed suicide, and one of them died as a result of alcohol abuse, if I remember correctly. Just a real tremendous amount of tragedy. And then, of course, Ron, after his notoriety and his celebrated rides on Secretariat, a few years later, he got into an accident when a horse stumbled at the starting gate and threw him, and that left him paralyzed from the waist down. And he was confined to a wheelchair for the remainder of his life, 47 years. And that man displayed a tremendous amount of courage, because he did a lot for disabled jockeys, and he went through so much pain, and there were several times he almost died. I remember a book that he co-wrote called The Will to Win, and I have that book, and in it he had gone through so many infections, so many near misses of dying, and he courageously survived it. But of course, now, he just had a birthday here a few weeks ago, and he remained active almost till the end. He would go around the country, and mostly back east, and he would sign autographs, and he would do interviews about Secretariat and about his career. But damn it, it's an end of the era. It's the end of an era, Everybody who was directly connected to Secretariat during Secretariat's racing career have now passed away. So that includes Penny Chenery, that includes who was the owner, breeder, that includes Lucien Lauren, the trainer, that includes Ron Turcotte, the jockey, that includes the exercise riders, James Gaffney and Charlie Davis, and of course his groom, Eddie Sweat. So they've all passed away from the scene. And anyway, I thought I would talk about him. He handled himself with class. He handled himself with courage. And he knew he was on the greatest horse that ever stepped foot on a racetrack. He did. But he always said it was the horse. Not anything magical he did. He just sat there while the horse did it. Beat the pants off of everybody. But anyway, I thought that I would give my reflections about this remarkable individual. And that is it for me.